My millionaire grandpa found me and my daughter living under a bridge. I froze in shock because my father had always told me he was dead. Grandpa took us to a huge, luxurious mansion. Then he revealed a secret about my father that changed everything. I thought I'd hit rock bottom when my wife left me and my 8-month-old baby girl, casting us out into the world with nothing but a broken heart. But the universe wasn't done with its cruel jokes, because just a few months later, my own parents, the people who were supposed to be our refuge, ruthlessly kicked us onto the streets, forcing us to sleep under a freezing bridge. I truly believed nothing could surprise me more, until that one bitter, cold night when a stranger in an expensive suit appeared from the shadows and uttered 5 words that completely shattered my reality. "I am your grandfather." My mind just froze. Stunned. Because my whole life I'd been told he was long dead, gone forever. And what happened next? Well, that changed everything. My name is Ronald Hull, and I was 31 years old, a factory worker in a small, dusty industrial town in Indiana. Life was never a walk in the park, but I never in a million years imagined it could crumble so completely, so swiftly. Just a handful of months before, I had a home. Modest, sure, but hard-earned, and it was ours. I had Melissa, the woman I loved, and our tiny daughter, Cameron, who was my whole entire universe. Now, all of that feels like a distant dream, fading like smoke on the wind. Every single morning, my alarm screamed at 5 a.m., long before dawn even dared to peek over the gray rooftops of our town. I'd drag myself out of bed, every muscle in my shoulders screaming from the previous day's grind at the steel factory. The constant roar of machinery, that acrid, metallic smell clinging to everything, the sweat perpetually stinging my eyes. That was my life. Day in, day out. But I never complained. Not once. Because I did it for Melissa. I did it for Cameron, for the sheer joy of her little smile when I held her, for the gentle, loving gaze Melissa used to give me. Our apartment was small, the walls stained, the furniture worn. My factory wages were just enough to cover rent, buy formula for Cameron, and keep our humble home warm. Melissa had been an office clerk, but after Cameron arrived, she decided to stay home to care for her. And honestly, I didn't mind. Even though the financial burden felt like a physical weight on my shoulders, I believed that's what a man did. He provided. He protected. No matter how tough things got. "Are you okay, Ron?" Melissa would ask me sometimes, her voice soft, as I slumped into a chair after a shift, my hands still grimy with machine oil. She'd stand in the corner of our small kitchen, the dim yellow light casting a faint glow on her brown hair. I'd always smile and nod, "I'm fine. As long as you and Cameron are happy, I can handle anything." But I missed it. Or maybe I just chose not to see it. The way her eyes had changed. She didn't look at me like she used to. Her smiles became forced, our conversations grew shorter, like snippets of a half-forgotten song. Some nights, when I came home late from a shift, I'd find her sitting alone in the living room, eyes glued to her phone, her fingers scrolling frantically, almost as if she was trying to hide something. "Who's that?" I'd ask, trying to keep my tone light, trying to sound casual. "Just an old friend," she'd reply quickly, snapping the screen off. I told myself I was just being paranoid. Melissa was my wife, the mother of my child. She wouldn't do anything to hurt our family, right? But deep down, I felt this growing distance between us, like a tiny crack appearing in a wall, spreading wider each day. And I had no idea how to fix it. Cameron, she was my only light, my true north. At 8 months old, with her chubby cheeks and big, round eyes, she always looked at me like I was her entire universe. Every time I held her, my exhaustion just melted away. "You're my treasure, you know that?" I'd whisper, and she'd grab my finger, giggling that pure, innocent giggle. Those moments, they made me forget the piling bills, the late-night overtime shifts, and the way Melissa avoided my gaze. But then, the doubt started to gnaw at me, a relentless, icy worm. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. I caught Melissa hurriedly shoving her phone into her pocket. She flinched when she saw me, and for just a brief, agonizing moment, I saw pure panic in her eyes. "Why are you so nervous?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice calm, steady. It's nothing, she said, but her voice trembled, a telltale sign of a secret festering between us. I didn't want to believe my instincts, but they just grew stronger, like a storm brewing on the horizon. And that storm? It hit faster than I could have ever imagined, sweeping away everything I once called family. It was a Saturday. I'd taken a rare day off to stay home with Cameron. Melissa said she needed to go out to meet a friend. Just grabbing coffee, don't worry, she'd said, but her eyes never met mine. I nodded, holding Cameron in my arms, watching Melissa leave, her purse swinging on her shoulder. Something about the way she walked made my heart tighten, a cold premonition, but I didn't dare dwell on it. That night, she came home late. I was sitting on the sofa, Cameron fast asleep in her crib. When Melissa walked in, I caught a whiff of unfamiliar perfume, definitely not the one she usually wore. Where were you all day? I asked, trying desperately to keep my tone gentle, but she just shook her head, muttering something about meeting an old colleague. I wanted to believe her, really I did, but my heart was screaming otherwise. The very next day, I did something I never, ever thought I'd do. While Melissa was in the shower, I checked her phone. Just a few minutes scrolling through her messages shattered my entire world. The words on the screen cut into my heart like 1,000 knives. I miss you. Read a message from an unsaved number. Meet again tonight. I'll tell Ron I'm seeing a friend. And then dozens more messages, sweet, intimate, from a man I didn't know. But I knew enough to understand, with a gut-wrenching certainty, that Melissa had utterly betrayed me. I stood there, my hands trembling so violently the phone slipped from my grasp and hit the floor with a clatter. When Melissa stepped out of the bathroom, she looked at me, then at the phone on the ground. Her face went absolutely pale. Ron. She stammered, but I didn't let her finish. Who is he, Melissa? My voice wasn't from anger, not really. It was from pure, unadulterated pain. Who is he that you could do this? To me? To Cameron? She looked up, her eyes shimmering with an emotion I couldn't decipher. Was it regret? Or cold, hard resolve? Ron, she said, her voice chillingly calm. We need to talk. And then she told me. No long explanations, no beating around the bush. She'd reconnected with an old colleague from work, a guy named Brian I'd only heard mentioned in passing. We were just talking at first, she said, but her voice faltered as she spoke of later meetings, coffee dates that stretched into evenings, messages that turned into declarations of love. He makes me feel alive, Ron. I'm sorry, but I can't keep living like this. I want a divorce. The word divorce hit me like a sledgehammer. I wanted to scream, to ask her why, to beg her to reconsider. For Cameron. For the years we'd spent together. But I just stood there, motionless, watching the woman I loved become a total stranger. What about Cameron? I asked, my voice choking. She's only 8 months old, Melissa. What are you going to do about her? She was silent. And that silence, it hurt more than any words could. I can't take care of her, she said after a pause, her voice cold as ice. You keep her, Ron. I need a new life. I don't remember what I said after that. Maybe I didn't say anything at all. All I know is that when Melissa walked out of the apartment, pulling a small suitcase behind her, it felt like the world collapsed beneath my feet. She didn't look back, not once, at Cameron. The door slammed shut, and I stood there alone, with my baby girl and a heart utterly shattered. The days that followed passed in a fog. I still went to work, stood by the production line at the steel factory, but my mind was adrift. The roar of the machines couldn't drown out the questions swirling in my head. Why did she do this? What did I do wrong? How was I going to raise Cameron alone? Melissa didn't take long to act on her words. A week later, I received a court summons. She had filed for divorce, and honestly, I didn't have the strength to fight it. The court in our small town wasn't complicated, but it certainly wasn't forgiving. They divided our assets, a fancy term for the tiny apartment Melissa and I had slaved to pay off over the years, and the meager savings I'd scraped together for Cameron. That apartment, though run down, was everything I'd been proud of. A home I'd built with sweat and late-night shifts at the factory. The court ordered it sold to split the money, as I couldn't afford to buy out Melissa's share. Everything happened dizzily fast. Appraisers came, then the for sale sign went up. I stood watching the apartment where Cameron was born, where I thought we'd have a forever home, sold off for a pittance. On the day they came to clear out the furniture, I stood in the corner of the room, holding Cameron in my arms. She babbled, her tiny hands clutching my shirt, as if she could sense her father's pain. I watched as the last of our belongings were taken away. The sofa where I'd sat holding Cameron. The kitchen table where Melissa used to cook simple dinners. The bed where we'd once lain together, dreaming of the future. All of it now just memories. I got half the money from the sale, but it was barely anything after paying off the bank. Melissa took her share and simply vanished. I heard rumors she'd moved to Indianapolis with Brian. She didn't call, didn't ask about Cameron. She left our daughter behind, left me, as if we'd never even existed in her life. I tried to stay strong for Cameron. She was the only reason I didn't completely fall apart. Every morning, I looked into her clear, innocent eyes and told myself I had to be strong. But the truth was, I was breaking. I hadn't just lost my wife, my home. I'd lost faith in what I thought would last forever. I had no choice but to turn to my parents for help. I called my father, Kenneth. "Dad, I need help," I said, my voice breaking with shame and desperation. Melissa left. "It's just me and Cameron now. I don't know what to do." There was a long silence, so long I thought he'd refuse. But then he spoke, his voice dry and curt. "Come back here. Stay with us for now. But you'll need to contribute to living expenses. We're not exactly flush with money." I let out a breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding, though my heart still felt heavy. I thought, at the very least, family would be a place where Cameron and I could find refuge. I packed the few belongings we had left. A bag of my clothes, a few outfits for Cameron, and an old stuffed bear she loved to clutch when she slept. I held her close, stepped out of the now empty apartment, and caught a bus to my parents' house. As I boarded the last bus out of town with Cameron in my arms, I felt like such a failure. The apartment, where I thought we'd have a forever home, was now someone else's. The money from its sale was nearly gone. I held my daughter tighter and whispered, "I'll figure it out, Cameron. I promise." But deep down, I didn't know how I'd keep that promise. My parents' house sat on the edge of town, a weathered two-story home with faded shingles and a front yard overrun with weeds. I stood at the door, holding Cameron, my heart pounding like a beggar's. I didn't want to come back here. Didn't want to face my parents' judgmental stares. But I had no other choice. I knocked, and when my mother, Denise, opened the door, she looked me up and down, a critical gaze. "Come in, Ron," she said, her voice devoid of warmth. "But don't make noise. Your father's resting." I carried Cameron up to my old room. It was still there, but not as I remembered it. A thin layer of dust coated the floor. The bed was covered with an old sheet, and the corner was stuffed with random cardboard boxes my parents had shoved in. "This room hasn't been used in a while. Clean it yourself," my mother said, her tone flat as if it were no big deal. I swallowed hard, looking around the room that once held my childhood dreams, now cold, dusty, and forgotten. The house had only 3 bedrooms. My parents' was the largest at the end of the hall. Derek's, my younger brother's, was tidy, with a fresh mattress and his personal belongings untouched, because he and his wife visited often. And then there was my room. Now little more than a storage closet. The favoritism stabbed at my heart from the very first moment. But I stayed silent. I just needed a place for Cameron, even if this childhood room had faded with time. I cleaned the room, spread out a new blanket I bought with the little money I had left, set up Cameron's crib next to the bed, and tried to turn this place into a makeshift home. "This used to be our room," I whispered to her, holding her close. She babbled, grabbing my finger, and I turned away to hide my tears, to hide my overwhelming sense of failure. As for my family, my father, Kenneth, was a harsh man. A former railroad worker, now retired. He spoke little, but every word cut like a knife. "You need to pay for expenses, Ron," he said on my first day as I was unpacking in the room. "We can't afford to feed 2 extra mouths. And keep it quiet. Don't let Cameron's crying disturb us. I nodded, not daring to argue. I knew my parents had their own struggles. Dad's pension was modest, and Mom worked part-time at a grocery store, but the fact that they preserved Derek's room like a museum while mine was left to gather dust made their favoritism painfully clear. Derek, my younger brother, had always been the golden child. Smarter, sent to college with my parents' support, while I had to start working early to fend for myself. Now, when I needed help the most, they still prioritized him. As if I wasn't worth as much. I went back to the steel factory, working like a machine, taking on night shifts to make ends meet. Each day, I left the house before dawn, leaving Cameron with a kind neighbor who watched her for a small fee. I worked amid the roar of machinery, sweat soaking my shirt. But my mind was always with Cameron. I feared she'd go hungry, get sick, or that I wouldn't be able to provide for her. My wages, after paying for childcare and giving my parents a share for expenses, left me with almost nothing. But I gritted my teeth and pushed through. For Cameron. For the hope that one day I'd get us out of this house where love seemed reserved only for the successful. But my parents didn't make things any easier. My mother constantly reminded me of my failures. "Look at Derek," she said one evening as I came home after a 12-hour shift, my hands still black with machine oil. "He has a career, a proper family. Why can't you be like him, Ron?" I bowed my head silent. Derek was their pride and joy. He worked for an insurance company in Indianapolis, had a beautiful wife named Laura, and a nice house. To my parents, Derek was the picture of success. While I was just a failed factory worker, dragging along a young child, even though I was in my own childhood room. I didn't envy Derek. He was my brother, and I was glad he had a good life. But every time my mother compared us, it felt like another stab to the heart. I wanted to scream that I was trying my best, that I didn't choose to be abandoned by my wife, to lose my home, to come back here like a loser with my daughter in tow. But I stayed quiet, holding Cameron close and whispering, "I'll make it, kid." My childhood room, with its faded memories on the walls, became the place where I silently swallowed my pain, where I held my daughter each night and prayed for a way out. Things got worse when Laura, Derek's wife, gave birth to twins. The two babies, a boy and a girl, arrived like a whirlwind, drawing all my parents' attention. Suddenly, the house was filled with laughter and chatter. My parents bought toys, diapers, and cute clothes for Derek's kids. Every weekend, Derek and Laura brought the twins over, and the house buzzed like a happy family, except for me and Cameron. Derek's room became the headquarters for the grandkids, filled with new toys and echoing with laughter. While my room, my childhood room, was treated like a temporary burden. The favoritism hit me hard. My mother would hold Derek's twins, beaming with joy, whispering sweet words, while Cameron, her own granddaughter, got only a passing glance or a scolding when she cried. "Cameron's growing fast, but she's too noisy," my mother said coldly one night when Cameron was fussy from teething. "You need to teach her to behave, Ron. We need rest to take care of Derek's kids." I wanted to say that Cameron was her granddaughter, too. That she needed love just like the other kids. But I knew it was pointless. My parents poured all their affection into Derek and his family, as if they were the real family, while Cameron and I were just temporary intruders, unworthy of priority. My father was even more direct. One evening, as I came home from work, he called me into the living room. "Ron," he said, his voice stern. "You've been here long enough. We can't keep supporting you and Cameron forever. Derek needs us more. He's got 2 kids, big responsibilities, and when they visit, we need space for them to be comfortable. You need to figure things out." I stood there stunned, as if I'd been slept. "Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm doing my best. I work all day. I pay for expenses. I just need a little more time. For Cameron. I'm begging you, for her sake." But he just shook his head. "You're a grown man, Ron. A man stands on his own 2 feet. We can't carry any more burdens, especially when Derek and his kids need us." The word burden pierced my heart like a dagger. To my parents, Cameron and I weren't family. We were a burden. They were willing to keep a room ready for Derek's visits, but me, Their eldest son, in my own childhood room, was being pushed out onto the street. The tension in the house grew thicker, suffocating. Every cry from Cameron, every time I accidentally spilled something in the room, became an excuse for my mother to complain. "That kid's too loud, Ron," she'd say. "You need to find somewhere else to stay. Derek and Laura are coming with the kids soon, and we need to prepare the house for them." I tried to explain that I was saving money, that I just needed more time, but she wouldn't listen. "Derek never caused this kind of trouble," she'd say. And I knew in her eyes I'd never measure up to my brother. The fateful day came abruptly. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, my father called me in. He stood at the door of my childhood room now filled with painful memories, his eyes cold. "Ron," he said, "you need to move out. We need this room to fix up for Derek's kids when they visit. You have 2 weeks. I stood there holding Cameron, feeling the ground collapse beneath me. 2 weeks. I repeated, my voice trembling. "Dad, where am I supposed to go? How are Cameron and I supposed to live?" "That's your problem," he replied, then turned away without a single glance back. My mother stood in the corner, silent, but her eyes said it all. She agreed with him. And I, her eldest son, no longer had a place in this house. I went back to the room, sat on the bed, and held Cameron close. She babbled, clutching my shirt as if sensing her father's pain. I looked around my childhood room, its walls, once witnesses to my dreams, now just a place of temporary humiliation. I'd lost everything. My wife, my home, and now my own family. I didn't know where I'd go or what I'd do. But I knew one thing. I had to protect Cameron, no matter the cost. The 2 weeks passed like a nightmare. I spent every spare moment searching for a new place to live, scouring local newspapers, asking old factory friends for leads. The money left from selling the house wasn't much, but it was enough to rent a cheap, run-down apartment on the outskirts of town. A dilapidated building with stained walls and a musty smell, not unlike the basement of my parents' house. The landlord, a gaunt old man named Frank, eyed me and Cameron suspiciously. "No noise and pay on time," he said, his voice raspy from smoking. I nodded, signing the lease with trembling hands, and moved in with our few belongings: a foldable bed from my parents' house, Cameron's crib, and a small gas stove I bought at a second-hand market. The apartment was a single room with a shared bathroom in the hallway. But at least it was ours. For now, I thought. I could make it work. My factory wages were steady, though tight. I'd work harder, save every penny for rent, Cameron's milk, and simple food like cold-cut sandwiches. "We'll be okay, kid," I whispered to Cameron each night as she slept soundly in her crib. But reality was harsher than I'd imagined. Living costs here were higher than expected. Utilities, gas, and small expenses like diapers for Cameron. My savings dwindled like water slipping through my fingers. I cut back on everything. Ate less. Turned off the lights early, but it still wasn't enough. By the end of each month, I stared at piling bills, my heart tightening with worry. The biggest problem was Cameron. She was almost a year old now, active and needing constant care. Back at my parents' house, I could leave her with a kind neighbor for a small fee. In this new place, I didn't know anyone I could trust. The nearest daycare charged double my weekly wage. "Not enough money," I muttered, staring at a flyer taped to a lamppost. I couldn't leave her alone. She was too small, too fragile. So, I made a desperate choice. I'd bring Cameron to work with me. It was a last resort, but I had no other option. That morning, I carried her to the steel factory, tucked in an old backpack. The roar of machinery and the acrid smell of burning metal were no place for a child. I hid Cameron in a corner of the break room inside a cardboard box lined with a blanket, hoping she'd stay quiet. "Daddy's going to work, be good." "Okay," I whispered, my heart pounding with fear of getting caught. My coworkers gave me odd looks, but said nothing, maybe out of pity. I worked like a madman, darting between the production line and the break room to check on her, feeding her milk when she fussed. But I couldn't hide her forever. Cameron started crying, her wails cutting through the noise of the machines. The foreman, a burly man named Mike with a perpetually sour face, called me into his office. "Ron, are you out of your mind?" he bellowed, pointing at Cameron, crying in my arms. "This is a factory, not a daycare. I've already warned you about your slipping performance." I bowed my head, my voice shaking. "I'm sorry, boss, but I have no one to watch her. My wife left. My family won't help. Just this once, I promise I'll." But Mike shook his head. His face red. "No. Just this once, you're fired. Grab your stuff and get out." I stood there frozen, as if the world had collapsed. The job, the only thing keeping me afloat, was gone. I left the factory with Cameron in my arms, tears streaming down my face, mixing with sweat. "I'm sorry, kid," I whispered, but she just looked at me with innocent eyes, unaware of it all. Losing my job was a death blow. I wandered the town, applying everywhere: grocery stores, auto shops, even fast food joints. But my resume wasn't impressive. Just a 31-year-old factory worker with no degree, now burdened with a young child. "We need full-time workers with no distractions," one manager said, glancing at Cameron in my arms. "Sorry, but no." I tried place after place, but the answer was always the same: rejection. Each door that shut made me feel smaller, more useless. The meager unemployment benefits barely lasted a few weeks, but the bills kept coming. I used up my savings to pay rent, but eventually I couldn't keep up. One rainy afternoon, Frank, the landlord, knocked on my door. "Ron, you're 2 months behind," he said coldly, without a shred of sympathy. "Move out. I need to rent to someone else." I begged. "Mr. Frank, please give me more time. I'm looking for work. I'll pay." But he shook his head and walked away. The next day, our belongings were tossed onto the sidewalk. I stood in the rain, holding Cameron under my worn-out jacket, watching the apartment, the last place we called home, locked shut. There was nowhere left to go. I called my parents one last time, my voice breaking with desperation. "Dad, please. I just need a place to stay." Cameron soaked. "I don't know what to do." But my father's voice was dry over the phone. "Ron, we can't. Derek and Laura are coming with the twins. We have to take care of them. Figure it out, son." The call ended, and my world went dark. They refused because of Derek. Always Derek. I held Cameron, wandering in the rain. My heart shattered. We were officially homeless. That first night, we took shelter under a highway bridge where other drifters gathered. Rain pattered overhead, and the wind cut through like ice. I wrapped Cameron in an old blanket, holding her close to keep her warm. She cried from hunger, from cold, and all I could do was whisper, "Daddy's here, kid." The next morning, I went to the local church where they handed out free food. A kind old woman gave me a box of milk and bread, her eyes full of pity. "Take this, son. God will watch over you and your girl." I took it, tears streaming down, feeling a flicker of warmth from a stranger for the first time. Under the bridge, we survived day to day. I learned to get food from soup kitchens where other homeless people shared their stories. Lost jobs, lost homes, lost everything, just like me. They didn't judge, didn't play favorites. An old man named Joe, a former mechanic, gave me an old tent and taught me how to start a fire for warmth. "Down here, everyone's struggling, but we help each other," he said, clapping my shoulder. A woman named Maria, also raising a young child, gave Cameron some hand-me-down clothes and watched her when I went job hunting. They, people at the bottom of society, showed me more humanity than my own family. Unlike my parents, they shared without expecting anything, listened without comparing. Under the bridge, in those freezing nights, I learned that true kindness comes from the most unexpected places. Cameron, though young, seemed to feel it too. She smiled more when playing with the other kids under the bridge. But this life wasn't easy. Every night, I lay awake worrying about the future. Cameron started getting sick from the cold, and I had to beg at a free clinic for a doctor to see her. "She'll be okay, but she needs a warmer place," they said. I nodded, but I knew we had nowhere to go. I kept looking for work, but with my ragged clothes and the smell of campfire smoke clinging to me, no one would hire me. I struggled, went hungry. But for Cameron, I didn't give up. She was my only light, the reason I kept breathing, kept fighting. Then one evening, a storm rolled in. Rain poured down in sheets and fierce winds shook the tent. Water seeped through the ground, soaking the blankets. I huddled with Cameron in a corner, using my jacket to shield her, but droplets still fell on us. She wailed, her cries blending with the booming thunder. "Sure, it's okay. Daddy's here," I soothed, my heart pounding with worry. Joe and Maria had gone to find shelter elsewhere, leaving us alone under the dark bridge. I thought it was the worst night of my life, cold, hungry, and hopeless. I prayed silently, though I barely believed in God anymore. "Please give us a way out." Suddenly, through the torrential rain, I saw a shadowy figure approaching. An old man, tall but slightly stooped, dressed in an expensive black suit, holding an umbrella against the storm. He stopped in front of our tent, his eyes cutting through the darkness, settling on me and Cameron. I held her tighter, my protective instincts flaring. Under this bridge, a stranger could be anyone. A crook, a cop, or just another drifter. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice hoarse from the cold, struggling to sit up to shield her. The old man didn't answer right away. He folded his umbrella and crouched down to see us better. His wrinkled face lit by sharp eyes, as if studying something precious that had been lost. "I'm Philip," he said, his voice warm and steady, a stark contrast to the storm raging outside. "I'm your grandfather, Ronald." I froze. The word grandfather echoed in my head like thunder. My whole life, my father, Kenneth, had told me my grandfather died when I was young. "A car accident," he'd said, and we never spoke of it again. No photos, no mementos, just a void in our family story. "What? What did you say?" I stammered, my voice trembling. "My grandfather's dead." My dad said. "So, who are you really? How do you know my name?" Philip gave a sad smile, his eyes glistening under the faint glow of a street light reflecting off the bridge. "I didn't die, Ronald. Your father, Kenneth, lied. He took all my money, abandoned me and your grandmother, then spread that story to cover it up. I've been looking for you for a long time through a private investigator. I know everything about Melissa, the divorce, what you're going through." He paused, looking at Cameron, sobbing in my arms. "And this little girl, my great-granddaughter. Don't let her stay in this cold. Come with me. I want to take care of you both. To make up for what you've lost." I stared at the old man, my mind reeling. Doubt surged. Was this a cruel trick? A con man preying on desperate people like me? But as I looked closer, I saw an eerie resemblance. Sharp blue eyes like my father's. A crooked smile I vaguely recalled from hazy dreams of my past. And his voice, warm, sincere, not like a liar's. The rain kept falling. The wind howled and Cameron cried louder from the cold. I had nothing left to lose. No home, no job, no family. If he was a bad person, could things possibly get worse than this? But if he was telling the truth, maybe this was the way out, the glimmer of hope for Cameron. I looked at my daughter, her cheeks flushed from crying, and my heart twisted. "All right," I said, my voice choked. "I'll go with you, but if you're lying, I won't forgive you. For my daughter's sake." Philip nodded, standing and holding his umbrella over us. "You won't regret this, Ronald. Come on, my car's nearby." I picked up Cameron and followed him through the rain, my steps heavy with exhaustion and doubt. But deep inside, a faint spark of hope flickered. Maybe, just maybe, fate was finally smiling on us. We stepped out from under the bridge, the rain still pattering on Philip's umbrella. His car, a sleek black limousine with a uniformed driver waiting, stood not far off, its headlights cutting through the rain like a beacon. I hesitated for a second, glancing back at the soggy tent now torn apart by the wind. Then I climbed into the car. Inside it was warm, the leather seats soft, and a child's car seat was already installed. Philip sat across from me, giving a faint smile when he saw my surprise. "I came prepared," he said, his voice warm. "She needs to be safe." I held Cameron closer. She'd stopped crying, perhaps soothed by the sudden warmth, and I stared out the window as the car pulled away. We left Indiana, heading for Florida, a long journey, but Philip had arranged a private plane from a nearby airport. I didn't ask much. My exhausted mind focused only on keeping Cameron warm. During the flight, I drifted into sleep. The first time in months, I wasn't jolted awake by cold winds or passing traffic. When we landed in Tampa, the sky was bright. Another car waited, taking us to the city's outskirts. The scenery changed as we drove from bustling streets to tree-lined roads, then to a gated community with high fences and an imposing iron gate. The car stopped in front of a sprawling mansion, like something out of a magazine, a two-story cream-colored building with red-tiled roofs, surrounded by lush green gardens and a shimmering pool under the Florida sun. I stood there holding Cameron, my jaw dropping in awe. This is your house," I stammered. Philip smiled, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Our house, Ronald. Come inside. You and your daughter need rest." Stepping into the mansion felt like entering another world. The grand foyer had marble floors, a sparkling crystal chandelier, and the faint scent of fresh flowers from a large vase. A middle-aged woman in a maid's uniform greeted us with a smile. "Welcome, sir, and welcome, Ronald and little Cameron," she said as if she'd known us forever. Philip introduced her. "This is Elena, the housekeeper. Over there is Luis, the chef, and security's at the gate. They'll take care of everything." I nodded, still dazed. Philip led us upstairs to a spacious guest room with a king-size bed, a private bathroom, and a corner filled with brand-new toys for kids. "This is for you and Cameron," he said. I had it ready. Later, Philip called a private doctor. A middle-aged man named Dr. Ramirez arrived within half an hour, carrying a full medical kit. He examined Cameron first, checking her temperature, listening to her lungs, and prescribing medicine for her cough. "She has a mild cold, but she'll be fine with proper care," he said, then turned to me. I sat there as he checked me. High blood pressure from stress, malnourishment, and minor cuts from street life. "You need rest and proper meals," he advised. Philip nodded and instructed the chef to prepare dinner. For the first time in months, I ate a real meal. Hot chicken soup, fresh salad, and toasted bread. Cameron got special formula milk, which she drank eagerly, her eyes brightening. That night, I lay on the soft bed, listening to Cameron's steady breathing in her crib beside me, and slept deeply. No nightmares, no worries. For the first time in years. The first days in the mansion passed like a dream. The house wasn't just grand. It was equipped with every comfort. A fruit orchard in the backyard where I could stroll with Cameron, a gym, and a library full of books. 24/7 security, daily cleaning by the staff, and 3 nutritious meals from the chef. Philip even hired a nanny named Sophia, a gentle young woman who'd worked at a high-end daycare, to look after Cameron when I needed a break. "You need time to recover," Philip said. "Let Sophia handle her." I hesitated at first, but Sophia quickly proved trustworthy. She sang lullabies to Cameron, played with her, and even taught me how to massage her to ease her cough. Cameron visibly improved. Her cheeks grew rosy, she smiled more, and she started to crawl around the room. As for me, I took hot showers daily, ate proper meals, and felt my body coming back to life. Doubts lingered, but each day they faded under Philip's genuine care. We began settling into life here. Mornings, I woke to the smell of coffee from the kitchen, eating breakfast with Philip as he talked about Florida, the sea, and the warm sun. In the afternoons, I took Cameron to the garden, watching her giggle as she touched the leaves. At night, Sophia watched her while I relaxed, reading or just gazing at the stars. Philip didn't push, only gently asking about my life, about Melissa, about the hardships. "There's no rush," he said. "You need time." I started opening up, telling him about the steel factory, the betrayal, my parents, and Derek. Philip listened, his eyes heavy with sadness, as if sharing my pain. Then one evening, with Cameron asleep under Sophia's care, Philip invited me to the balcony. A spot overlooking the pool shimmering under the lights. He poured 2 glasses of wine, sat in a leather chair, and said, "Ronald, it's time I told you the truth about the past. About why I found you." My heart raced, the air felt heavy, the faint sea breeze carrying a hint of salt. Philip stared into the distance, his voice low, as if recounting a painful story. Years ago, when I was younger, I had a happy family. Your grandmother, my wife, and our son, Kenneth, your father. I worked hard, saved money and bonds for our future. But Kenneth, he changed. He got hooked on gambling, racked up debts. One night, he took everything from the safe. Cash, bonds, even sold some family heirlooms, and vanished without a word. Your grandmother was devastated. She had a heart attack that night, and she was gone forever. Philip's voice broke. He took a sip of wine. His eyes were red. I sat there stunned, picturing it. My grandmother, whom I'd never known, dying from her own son's betrayal. I was nearly 50, penniless, heartbroken. I thought my life was over, but I didn't give up. I started over, a small job in real estate, borrowing from friends, working day and night. Over decades, I built Sunbay Properties, a coastal real estate company. From a tiny office in Tampa, I now have branches across Florida and beyond. I'm wealthy, but my heart was always empty. Losing my wife, my son, and not knowing what became of my grandson. He paused, looking at me. Recently, I hired investigators. They found Kenneth, then you, Ronald Hull. A factory worker in Indiana, divorced, kicked out by your parents, homeless under a bridge. I couldn't sit by. I had to find you. To make up for what you've suffered because of Kenneth's mistakes. I sat there reeling as if struck by lightning. The truth lay bare. My father, Kenneth, wasn't a victim of fate, but a thief, a betrayer who caused my grandmother's death. My grandfather, whom I thought was dead, sat here, wealthy and full of regret. I was grateful. He'd saved us from hell, but also anguished by my parents' lies. Why did my dad do it? I asked, my voice choked. Philip shook his head. He was weak, Ronald. But you're different. You're strong, like I was. We sat in silence for a long time, the sea breeze whispering like a comfort. I looked at the pool, my heart a storm of emotions, but also relieved. At last, I had a real family, a real home for Cameron. The days that followed were spent processing that truth. During the day, I took Cameron to the garden, watching her crawl clumsily on the lush green lawn, giggling as she touched vibrant flowers. Sophia, the nanny, was always there, helping me care for her without making me feel inadequate. But at night, when the mansion fell silent, memories crashed over me like waves. I thought about my parents, about growing up in that old house in Indiana, where Dad always spoke of my late grandfather with feigned regret. Now I understood why he rarely talked about the past, why Mom dodged my questions about Grandma. They'd built a lie to hide their guilt, and I, their eldest son, had lived in its shadow without knowing. I was angry, but also sad. Sad for my grandmother, for Philip, and for myself. I called my parents once, but they didn't pick up. Maybe they thought I was calling to bother them or beg. I didn't call again. I had Philip now and Cameron. That was enough. Philip didn't push me to do anything right away. He gave me time to heal, but he also subtly hinted at the future. One morning, as we ate breakfast on the patio, toast, fresh fruit, and steaming coffee, he looked at me and said, "Ronald, have you rested enough? Sunbay Properties could use someone like you. Start small. A sales position. No special treatment, just a chance to learn." I was taken aback, staring at him. "Grandpa, I'm just a factory worker. I don't know anything about real estate." Philip smiled, patting my shoulder. "You know about life, Ronald. That's something no school can teach. Give it a try. For Cameron, she needs a steady father." I hesitated, but agreed. I didn't want to live off his generosity forever. On my first day at the company, I wore a suit Philip bought me, feeling like I was in someone else's clothes. Sunbay Properties was in downtown Tampa, a modern glass building with a gleaming logo under the sun. The office buzzed with activity. Employees on phones and computers. Philip introduced me to the team but didn't highlight our connection, only saying I was a new hire. "Learn, Ronald," he whispered before leaving me to fend for myself. My role was modest, sitting at a small desk, calling potential clients, pitching coastal properties. A coworker, a guy named Kyle, guided me. "Just be genuine. Don't push clients like that." The first weeks were tough. I was used to manual labor at the factory, the roar of machines, and sweating through my shirt. Now I had to learn to persuade, read contracts, and handle numbers. Some calls ended abruptly with clients snapping, "Not interested. Goodbye." I came home exhausted, but I didn't quit. I remembered the days under the bridge, Cameron crying from cold. That was my drive. I studied hard, reading real estate books Philip left in the home library, asking Kyle about sales techniques, and observing meetings. My honesty became an asset. Clients sensed sincerity when I explained the practical benefits of a beachfront home. No exaggeration. Slowly, I proved myself. A month later, I closed my first deal. A middle-aged couple bought a small condo in Clearwater. They said, "You explained things clearly, not like other salespeople." Kyle slapped my shoulder. "Nice work, Ron. You've got a knack for this." I smiled, but inside I was grateful for my past struggles. Melissa's betrayal taught me patience. My parents' favoritism made me humble. Homelessness forged my resolve. I wasn't the timid factory worker anymore. I cared about my coworkers, listened to their issues, and acted quickly. In a team project, when arguments broke out over client approaches, I suggested a middle ground. Think of clients like family. They need homes, not empty promises. The team agreed, and the project succeeded. The senior manager, Helen, a sharp woman in her 50s, praised me in a meeting. "Ronald, you've got leadership potential. Keep that integrity, and you'll go far." Time passed, and I climbed the ranks, feeling the change in myself. From a broken man, I became decisive, empathetic. The company grew with my ideas, like a program to help financially struggling clients, inspired by my own life. Helen and other managers praised me. "Ronald, you don't just sell, you change lives." Philip smiled whenever he heard reports, and I knew he was preparing me for something bigger. 3 years passed. It sounds long, but to me it was a whirlwind. I rose through the ranks, not because of family ties, but through sheer merit. Then came the turning point, not dramatic like a movie, but real and earned. In a boardroom meeting, Philip stood, his voice resonating in the glass-walled room. "I've watched Ronald for 3 years. No privileges, no favoritism. He started at the bottom and rose through ability, increasing revenue by 100% and expanding 4 branches, building a company culture based on trust." The managers clapped. Helen smiled. "Ronald deserves this." Philip looked at me. "As of today, you're CEO of Sunbay Properties." I stood there stunned, my heart pounding. This wasn't a dream. It was real. I hugged Philip, whispering, "Thank you, Grandpa." He patted my shoulder. "You did this, Ronald." Being CEO wasn't easy. I sat in a large office with a vast ocean view, but the responsibilities were immense. Strategic decisions, investor meetings, crisis management. Yet, the company thrived. Record revenue, expansion into Georgia. Partners respected my reliability. Once, during a market downturn, I rejected a high-profit but risky deal. "We don't gamble with clients' futures," I said. They respected that, and more contracts followed. I stayed humble, eating lunch with employees, listening to ideas from the ground up. "I was once like you," I told the staff at a company meeting. "Let's build together." Cameron became my greatest joy. Now 5, she's bright, lively, and always asking about my work. "What do you do at the company, Daddy?" she asked, sitting on my lap at the dinner table. "I help people get nice homes like ours," I replied, kissing her forehead. She attends a private school, plays piano, and swims. Things I never dreamed of as a kid. She's my drive. Every company decision, I think of her, of building a legacy. The media took notice. A local business magazine ran a feature, From Homeless Factory Worker to CEO, Ronald Hull's inspiring story. They interviewed me in my office, and I spoke honestly about Melissa, my parents, the bridge, and Philip. "Life taught me failure isn't the end," I said. The article went viral, and a local morning show invited me. Sitting on their sofa, I shared my story with a genuine smile. "From homeless to CEO, how'd you do it?" the host asked. I looked at the camera. "Thanks to my grandfather and never giving up, everyone has a chance if they keep going." The interview boosted the company's fame. Clients poured in, and I received letters from people who'd struggled like me, thanking me for hope. But the past wouldn't let me rest. One afternoon, as I sat in my office reviewing revenue reports from the new Orlando branch, my phone rang. It was the receptionist. Her voice uneasy. "Ronald, there are two people in the lobby claiming to be your parents. They insist on seeing you now." I froze, gripping the phone tightly. My parents, Kenneth and Denise. After all these years, after they threw Cameron and me out like beggars. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Let them wait in the lobby. I'm coming down." I stood, gazing out the window at the sparkling Tampa Bay under the sun, and told myself, I'm not that weak Ronald anymore. I walked down to the lobby where the crystal chandelier light gleamed off the polished marble floor. There they stood. My father in a tight, outdated suit, my mother in a worn wool coat, her eyes darting around as if appraising the building's worth. It was the first time I'd seen them since they kicked us out of their Indiana home years ago. My father looked at me, forcing an awkward smile. "Ron, my boy, we saw you on TV. You've made it. We're so proud." My mother chimed in, her voice syrupy. "Yes, Ron. We should reconnect, family, right? We could help you manage all this." She waved her hand around the lobby as if staking a claim. I stood there, staring at them coldly, my heart no longer aching. Just calm. "Help? Like how you helped me and Cameron when you threw us out on the street. When I begged and you refused, all for Derek and his kids." My father's face paled, and he stammered. "Ron, those were tough times. You're rich now. We can let it go. We're your family." I shook my head, my voice steady. "Family? You abandoned me when I needed you most, and now you come for a share? No way." Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from the elevator. Philip appeared, tall in a sharp gray suit, his eyes cold as steel. He stopped beside me, staring straight at my parents, or rather, at his son, Kenneth. My father froze, his face ashen as if he'd seen a ghost. "Philip. Dad, you're alive," he stammered, stepping back. My mother clutched his arm, her eyes wide with horror. "It's impossible." Kenneth said, "You died years ago." Philip gave a chilling smile. "Yes, Kenneth said that to cover his crimes, but I'm alive, and I'm the chairman of Sunbay Properties, the company you're standing in." The lobby grew tense as a few employees and clients paused to watch, the air crackling with anticipation. Philip didn't hesitate, his voice ringing clear, laying the truth bare for all to hear. "Kenneth, you stole everything, my money, our savings, and abandoned your mother and me. Your mother, Ronald's grandmother, died of a heart attack from the shock. You left me penniless at 50, then spread lies that I was dead to live guilt-free. And then you abandoned your own son and granddaughter, Ronald and Cameron, when they needed you most, kicking them out for Derek's sake." My father shook his head, his face flushed, trying to defend himself. "It wasn't like that. I just borrowed it. Then things spiraled. You understand." But Philip pulled a stack of papers from his pocket. Investigator reports, old receipts, even photos of the empty safe from years ago. "Here's the proof, Kenneth. You can't deny it. And Denise, you knew everything but covered for him." My mother faltered, stammering. We didn't mean it, Ron. Say something." But I just stood there looking at them. Two people who were once my parents, now just a painful memory. They couldn't argue. The evidence was undeniable. The lobby was silent, a few employees whispering, and my parents lowered their heads, leaving in shame without another word. I watched them go, feeling no anger. Just release. Sometime later, Philip called me into his office. "Ronald, it's time to settle things," he said, his voice calm but resolute. He had invited my father, Kenneth, and Derek to a company meeting under the pretense of business discussions. I knew it wasn't an ordinary meeting, but I didn't object. The day arrived, and Sunbay Properties' Grand Conference Hall was packed with employees and senior managers. My father and Derek walked in, Derek in a flashy suit, exuding confidence as if he were there to claim a share, while my father kept his head down, avoiding eye contact. They sat in the front row, Derek whispering to Dad, "Guess Ron's ready to share the success." Philip took the stage, his voice booming through the microphone. "Today, I'm announcing my official will. I'm 80 years old, and Sunbay Properties needs a worthy successor. The room fell silent, all eyes on him. He looked at me and smiled. Ronald Hull will inherit the majority of my estate and full control of the company. Not because of blood, but because he's proven his character and ability. From a sales associate to CEO, building this company stronger with integrity and hard work. The hall erupted in applause. Helen and my colleagues cheered. I stood hugging Philip. My voice choked. Thank you, Grandpa. He patted my shoulder. You did this, Ronald. My father and Derek were cut out entirely. Not a cent, not a share. Derek's face paled, and he shot to his feet. How can this be? I'm your grandson, too. My father, trembling, pleaded in front of everyone. Philip, Dad, please forgive me. Ron, talk to him. We're family. The room went quiet, all eyes on the scene. I stepped onto the stage, looking straight into my father's eyes. The man who once threw me and Cameron out. My voice was cold but steady. The day you kicked me and Cameron out, I lost my father. The only person I respect now is my grandfather. My father sank into his chair, his face ashen. Derek, flushed with embarrassment, pulled him up, and they left in silence under the whispering gazes of the staff, departing in shame, with no further excuses. I watched them go, my heart at peace. The past was finally closed. After that meeting, everything became clearer than ever. I returned to the mansion, holding Cameron close. Her warmth was the reminder that life still held beauty. Philip patted my shoulder, his voice warm. You've done well, Ronald. Now it's time to live for the future. We ate dinner together, a true family meal, with Cameron's laughter echoing through the spacious room. She was growing up, her eyes bright and her smile radiant. No trace of those cold days under the bridge. I told her about her great-grandfather, about lessons from the past, and she listened, even if she didn't fully understand. One evening, when things had settled, I took Cameron to the company building's balcony, the highest point in Tampa with a sweeping view of the city's twinkling lights under the night sky. The cool sea breeze carried the scent of salt and freedom. I held her in my arms, pointing out the towering buildings and bustling streets below. Look, kid, that's our world, I whispered. Cameron giggled, waving as if greeting the lights. In that moment, I realized I'd come full circle, from the depths of despair, clutching my daughter under the rain, to this pinnacle of honor, standing tall as a man. I reflected on what I'd endured. Melissa's betrayal. My parents and Derek's coldness. The homeless nights under the bridge. And Philip's redemption. They were no longer wounds. They were lessons. The foundation of what I'd achieved. A thriving company, a loving home, and a heart capable of love. I'm both a successful CEO leading Sunbay Properties to record revenues and relentless expansion, and a devoted father spending every weekend with Cameron, taking her to the beach, teaching her to swim, and telling her stories of the kind people under the bridge. She's growing up in a new family filled with love. Philip as a gentle great-grandfather, Sophia as a caring aunt figure, and me, her dad, always there to protect her. We're no longer alone. The mansion is now alive with laughter, shared meals, and new memories. But deep down, I've learned a profound truth. Blood doesn't always make a family. My biological parents, despite sharing my blood, abandoned me when I needed them most. Yet Philip, betrayed by his own son, came back to make amends. It's love, responsibility, and integrity that create a true legacy. The one I'll pass on to Cameron so she grows up valuing those who truly stand by her. And if there's any advice from this journey, it's this: keep pushing forward, no matter how tough the odds. I once thought my life was over under that bridge, but I didn't give up. I took one step at a time. The future will always be bright if you keep moving forward, never quitting. Life may push you to the bottom, but you decide whether to stand up. For me, Cameron was my reason to rise. And now I stand here, at the top, ready for whatever comes next.